Hey everyone, welcome back, ready to dive deep. Today, we're tackling something, well, a little controversial, maybe even a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, we're going there.
We're talking about laziness.
Ooh.
Or should I say the idea of laziness? Because the deep dive we're doing today, it's all based on this article. It's called Laziness Does Not Exist.
I love this article.
It's so good. And it's written by a social psychologist named Dr. Devin Price.
Yeah, he really digs into how we use this word lazy, this label,
Right.
as like a judgment.
Totally.
Instead of actually explaining anything about behavior.
Yeah, like instead of trying to understand why someone might be struggling or acting in a way we don't get, we slap on this lazy label.
Exactly, and it shuts down any real understanding.
So our mission today, well, we're going to unpack why this matters.
Huge.
Big time. To you listening right now, think about a time you felt judged as lazy.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe you've judged someone else that way.
Happens all the time, right?
It does, but after this deep dive, you're going to see things differently, I promise.
Yeah, this is a perspective shift for sure.
So to kick things off, Dr. Price, he makes this really powerful point about context, about how crucial it is to see the whole picture.
And he uses this example. It's about people experiencing homelessness
Oh, right.
and how we tend to make these snap judgments about their choices.
Like, we see someone on the street and we think, oh, they must be lazy, not trying hard enough.
Yeah, and Dr. Price is like, hold on a second. Have you walked a mile in their shoes?
That's so true, because if you think about it,
Yeah,
for someone struggling with homelessness, just surviving each day, finding food and shelter, it's exhausting.
absolutely.
It takes an incredible amount of energy and effort.
So much resilience.
So when we see someone in that situation, maybe buying a pack of cigarettes or, a bottle of alcohol, it's easy to judge.
Right, we jump to lazy, irresponsible.
But Dr. Price says those choices, they might actually be coping mechanisms, ways to deal with unbelievable stress and hardship.
Exactly. It's not about motivation, it's about surviving.
And that's where this whole laziness myth falls apart.
Yeah, we assume a lack of effort when it might be about a lack of resources, a lack of support, a lack of options.
And this reframing, it's huge, especially when we start applying it to ourselves
Totally.
and our own struggles.
Or
like
procrastination.
actual procrastination, the classic lazy behavior, right?
Right. But what Dr. Price points out, it's so insightful. He says procrastination often comes down to anxiety
Yeah, so much anxiety.
and having trouble breaking down tasks into smaller, manageable steps.
It's that executive function thing, right?
Yes, that ability to plan, organize, get things done.
And some people, their brains just aren't wired that way.
And it's not their fault.
No, not at all.
Dr. Price actually talks about his own experience writing his dissertation.
Yeah, he's like, I found it easy to stay on schedule, to structure my work.
He's got that natural executive function ability.
Right, but he recognizes that not everyone does.
And that's when the judgments come in.
Totally.
We assume everyone should function the same way. We set these unrealistic expectations.
So if you're someone who struggles with procrastination, listen up.
This is for you.
It's not a character flaw, okay? It's about understanding your brain, your needs.
Then finding strategies that work for you, not against you.
Absolutely. Now, Dr. Price saw this laziness myth playing out in a really harmful way in his own field, academia.
Oh yeah, he's got stories.
As a professor, he saw how students were labeled lazy when they were actually dealing with, well, things that weren't visible.
Unseen barriers.
Exactly.
He tells this really powerful story about a student who was skipping class.
Okay.
And it turned out she was struggling with mental health challenges.
Wow.
But she was terrified to tell anyone, because of the judgment.
That fear is so real.
Yeah, it breaks my heart.
And then he contrasts her experience with another professor who refused to make any accommodations.
So rigid?
Yeah, and it highlights how damaging that mindset can be, especially in education.
That's like setting these kids up to fail.
Yeah, but in Dr. Price's class,
Yeah.
the same student, she found a safe space.
He got it.
He understood her challenges, he offered support, and guess what?
She thrived.
She did. She absolutely thrived.
It's amazing what happens when we replace judgment with compassion.
Right. It's like, okay, so how do we move away from this lazy label?
Big question.
How do we approach behavior with more empathy, more curiosity?
Especially when we're so used to making those snap judgments,
It's like ingrained in us.
Yeah.
I think it starts with remembering we all have struggles, things people can't see.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's like that example with judging people experiencing homelessness.
Right.
We have to look inward and ask, am I seeing the whole picture?
Yeah, am I missing pieces of the puzzle?
Because judging without understanding, it's not only inaccurate.
It's unkind.
It is.
It's really about choosing kindness, choosing curiosity.
Yeah, choosing to see the human being behind the behavior.
That's where it all begins.
Okay, so we're talking about shifting from judgment, right, to curiosity. Recognizing those unseen barriers that might be shaping how someone's acting. But like, how do we actually do this? How do we actually put this into practice, day to day? Because it's one thing to talk about empathy and all that, but when you're in the moment and you're frustrated or confused by someone's behavior.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to self-awareness. Catching yourself when you're making those snap judgments and just taking a pause before you jump to conclusion.
Right.
Like really asking yourself, okay, am I really seeing this person's situation clearly? Or am I letting my own biases get in the way?
It's kind of like that saying, assume good intent.
Yeah.
But it's like taking it a step further, you know what I mean? It's not just about assuming positive intentions, it's acknowledging that there might be all these factors that you're totally unaware of.
Exactly, like you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, right?
Exactly.
And so it's about shifting from this mindset of blame to a mindset of understanding.
Okay, I like that.
Instead of asking, why are they so lazy? You can ask, what might be making this difficult for them?
That is such a powerful shift in perspective. It's
Exactly.
like, it feels more empowering,
Yeah.
both for yourself and for the person you're interacting with, It opens up the possibility for connection, for support, maybe even for growth.
Absolutely. It allows you to see each other as these complex human beings instead of just labels.
Right.
And it's important to recognize that there are often power dynamics at play when we use that lazy label.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, Dr. Price touches on this in the article, and I was thinking about it too, like who benefits from this judgment and who is silenced or dismissed when we use this label.
Yeah, it's often those in positions of power, right?
Yeah.
Bosses, teachers, parents, even.
Right.
Using lazy as a way to control someone,
Yeah.
to dismiss their needs, to justify unequal treatment, all that.
And then on the other side, it's often those who are already marginalized, those who are struggling. People with disabilities, mental health challenges, folks facing those systemic barriers we've talked about.
Exactly. And that lazy label just adds another layer of marginalization.
But like it ignores their very real needs.
Totally. And we see this play out in all sorts of systems, like in academia, which Dr. Price saw firsthand.
Yeah, with his students.
Remember that student who was struggling but was terrified to tell anyone? Instead of judging her, he offered understanding, accommodations, the whole deal.
Yeah, and I think that's where it all comes together, It's not enough to just say, oh, laziness is a myth. We have to put it into action. We need to create those systems and environments that actually support people's different needs.
Like he did for his students, right? Being flexible with deadlines, offering different ways to participate in class, just listening without judgment.
Yeah, and what happened?
They thrived. Students who had been labeled lazy in other places, they flourished in his classroom because they felt seen, they felt heard, they felt supported.
It's proof that when we create those right conditions, people can actually do amazing things.
They can.
And it's not just in schools, right? Think about workplaces. How many times have we heard about these toxic work environments?
Oh, so many.
Where employees are burnt out, overworked, afraid to speak up about what they need.
Yeah, and guess what? A lot of times, it's justified using that same laziness myth.
It's so frustrating.
It is. Like, employees are seen as just these cogs in a machine, not human beings with, actual needs and limitations.
Right. So when they burn out or they can't meet those crazy expectations,
Yeah.
they're blamed.
Oh, you're lazy. You're not a team player.
It's just a terrible cycle.
Awful. And it doesn't benefit anyone.
It really doesn't. We need a total paradigm shift.
Yes.
We need workplaces that actually care about employee well-being,
Absolutely.
where people can be open about what they need
Encourage that communication.
and recognize that everyone is different. We need different things to succeed.
Different strokes for different folks, right?
Right. And Dr. Price doesn't really give like concrete solutions for all this in his article.
Yeah.
But his work gives us a foundation, you know?
It does.
It gives us the tools to challenge that status quo, to advocate for ourselves and for others,
Yeah.
to try to create a world where everyone has a chance to thrive.
Regardless of how productive they are, how much they achieve.
It's a challenging message for sure, but it's hopeful too.
It is. It's a message we need to keep sharing.
Okay, so listeners, I want to hear from you. What's sticking with you from this deep dive? What's resonating? What are you noticing in your own life, in your own interactions? Keep thinking about this. Talk about it with people. Keep questioning those assumptions we've all been taught to believe. And stay tuned for part 3, where we're going to go even deeper, especially into self-compassion, because that's a huge piece of this puzzle too. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into Laziness Does Not Exist. And you know, we've been talking about dropping that lazy label, about being more empathetic and curious about other people's behavior, but it really all starts with ourselves, right?
Absolutely. It starts with self-compassion.
Yeah.
Because we often, we internalize all those societal messages about laziness.
Yeah.
And then we become our own worst critics.
It's so true.
Especially when it comes to like productivity and achievement.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of self-judgment.
Oh, totally. Like we set these crazy high expectations for ourselves.
Yeah, those impossible standards.
And then when we don't meet them, which of course happens because no one's perfect,
Right.
that inner critic comes out swinging.
Oh, yeah.
You're so lazy. Why can't you just get it together?
Ugh. I know that voice.
It's brutal.
And it's so damaging, That kind of constant self-criticism, it can lead to procrastination, burnout, even anxiety and depression.
It's not a good way to live.
No, it's not sustainable at all.
So how do we get out of that cycle? How do we cultivate more self-compassion, especially when we've been told our whole lives that we need to be hard on ourselves to achieve anything?
Well, I think it starts with awareness, right?
Okay, yeah.
Like noticing those negative self-talk patterns.
Catching yourself in the act.
Yeah. So when you hear yourself thinking, ugh, I'm so lazy for not finishing that project, or
Right.
I should be doing more.
I should.
Exactly. Pause for a second and challenge those thoughts.
Ask yourself, wait, is this really laziness or is something else going on?
Yeah, like maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, or maybe you just need a break, or maybe you're choosing to prioritize something else in your life right now.
Right. And that's okay.
It is. It's about giving yourself the same grace and understanding that we've been talking about giving to others.
Yeah, remembering that there are reasons behind our actions.
Even if we don't fully understand them in the moment.
And those reasons, they deserve compassion, not judgment.
Exactly.
This is something I have definitely struggled with.
Yeah.
I can be a bit of a perfectionist, and I used to beat myself up all the time for not being on 24/7, for not achieving at some crazy level.
Oh, I feel that. That pressure to perform can be paralyzing.
It really can.
It's like trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks,
That's a good analogy.
You might get there eventually, but it's going to be so much harder and more painful than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Self-compassion is about taking some of those rocks out of the backpack.
Lightening the load.
Exactly.
So, okay, how do we actually do that? How do we practice self-compassion?
Well, there are a lot of different approaches, but one simple exercise is to just notice those negative thoughts
Okay.
and then try to gently reframe them.
Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're thinking, ugh, I'm so lazy for not working out today.
Yeah, classic.
You could try saying instead, it's okay that I didn't work out today. I'm listening to my body and I'm choosing to rest.
It's like talking to yourself like you'd talk to a good friend.
Exactly. With kindness and understanding.
Okay, so recognizing that inner critic and then choosing to respond differently.
Yeah, choosing kindness over judgment.
It takes practice though, right?
It does. It's a process.
But it gets easier, hopefully.
It does. The more you practice self-compassion, the easier it becomes to navigate those challenges without all that self-flagellation.
So bringing it back to Dr. Price and this idea that laziness does not exist.
Yeah.
It seems like self-compassion is a huge piece of this.
It is.
It's not just about challenging those external judgments and labels. It's about challenging the stuff we're carrying around inside ourselves, too.
Yeah, those limiting beliefs that hold us back.
It's like remembering that we're all worthy of kindness.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what we achieve or how productive we are.
Exactly. And, when we can be kind to ourselves, it actually makes it easier to be kind to others, too.
Oh, it's that ripple effect.
Exactly. Self-compassion can transform our relationships, our communities, the whole world, really.
It's a powerful thing. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
we hope it's given you some new ways of thinking about this whole idea of laziness.
So new tools.
Some tools. Remember, laziness is a myth. Empathy, understanding, and self-compassion, those are the keys to really unlocking our full potential, both individually and collectively.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.